Believing that reality is only a perception of our human limited thinking, our next guest understands what it takes to trust in the unknown and reach for the best in yourself. Hi, and welcome to the U World Order Showcase podcast, where we feature life, health, transformational coaches and spiritual entrepreneurs stepping up to be the change they seek in the world. I'm your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist, on a mission to help coaches and entrepreneurs amplify their voice, monetize their mission, and get visible, leveraging the podcasts and the huge audience we have over on the Gnostic TV network. Today, we are chatting with my good friend, Allie Davidson. Her mission is to help women heal from loss, betrayal, and various forms of devastation, to reinvent themselves after great transitions and live full, vibrant lives and productive lives. She's also the author of Born of Betrayal. Welcome to the show, Allie.
Thank you, Jill. I'm so excited to be here.
So, just to catch you guys up, Allie and I've been having this conversation before we hit record. It was just we're the basic thread of it is we were talking about the Cathars and about Mary Magdalene and about who is God. And so Allie was starting to tell me the story about one time when she was speaking in front of a church. And if you wouldn't mind just backing up and asking those two questions again, and we'll go from there. I hope you guys get so much out of this conversation because I was just like, we can't just keep going. We have to record this. So,
Thanks, Jill. Well, what I was saying is I was invited to speak at a church, and it was a non-denominational church. And so I started by asking the audience two questions. The first one was, do you believe that before you come into this body, into this life, that you are part of the whole of God, the light and enlightenment of God? And everybody in the audience nodded. And I said, okay, so we're in agreement. And then the second question is, and when you die, when you leave this shell of a body, do you believe that you go back to the wholeness and the light of God and you are enlightened? You're part of all of it. And everybody was like, yeah. And I said, then why the hell are we here? Why would we possibly put ourselves through a whole lifetime of trying to become enlightened when we already are before we come and we know we will be on a soul level when we leave? There must be another purpose. And for me, my discovery is that the purpose is simply the experience. It's the experience because I am part of the whole. I know you gave a beautiful crystal goblet way of describing it. I describe it as the ocean. Like the ocean cannot exist without every molecule of water, which is what we are. God is the ocean. But we also cannot be a single molecule without the ocean. So it's a symbiotic experience of oneness with the whole, right? And so how can it be then that we separate? And I remember having a conversation with this really young kid way early in the wee hours of the morning, and he's like, so what do you think is our greatest angst? And I said, it happens the moment we are born and we are separated from our mothers, because that is the moment that the physical body feels. So God feels the separation of itself. And then we spend a whole life like Renee, what's her name? I want to say Renee Brown, but is that right? Brene Brown. Brene says belonging is one of our most deepest yearnings, right? Because we don't want to be separate. And then we die in that instant alone and reunite. So that's what we were talking about. I really believe that we're here to experience because God needs to experience itself, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like,
It wants novelty.
yeah, otherwise it'd be very boring. I mean, every day something else was created. And so the reason we are that final amazing being is because we do have free will and we do have the power to reason. And so we have a choice. We don't always choose the best ones, but
But we do make choices, and every choice has a consequence.
Yep.
And often we're like, oh, we don't really have a choice. We have to do this. Well, what you really mean is, I don't want the consequences of the decision that I know I should make. So I'm going to make this other decision. Always have a choice. There's just the consequences. We choose which consequence is more appealing than the other consequence.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're both bad consequences, and you're just like, I
Between a
don't
rock and a
know.
hard place, right?
Yeah.
And I had a young man ask me one day, he was a kid going through recovery from addiction, and they had the 12 steps, but
Mhm.
he had always been an atheist, and he's like, I want to believe something. How do I choose? And I said, nobody knows the truth, the absolute fact of their belief. They choose it because in believing that particular belief, they feel better. They feel better than they felt before that belief. So this there is no right or wrong answer. And just like you said, every choice has a consequence. And on top of that, I've always lived by the seat of my pants in many ways and always believed that everything happens for a reason, right? And that's something everybody says now. But then when something bad happens, they go, oh, well, this was bad. There couldn't have been a reason for that. It's like, no, you have to make a commitment here. Either everything happens for a reason, and that means whatever you consider good or bad, or everything is random. It can't be a little bit of this and that. So I had a devastating financial experience in 2008 where I lost my home, I lost my business. The economy just took me down. And before I had gotten into this particular business, I had all the signs that pointed in the right direction. I mean, the signs were there. It was supposed to happen. And then when the bad stuff hit, I'm like, well, then that was supposed to happen too. So what was the journey about? Right? Yeah.
I loved your statement about the wind and the leaf
No. It's hard to
because
go
I
back into
think
it.
that is so important.
Okay, I'll
You
share
want
that. Yeah.
to share that? Because
So to put it in context, we were talking about, what is the purpose of this life? And we both agreed that it is simply to experience. But what is it that's experiencing it? And we agreed that it's the wholeness, it's the God within us that experiences itself through us, through our physical body. And I liken it to the wind, in that the wind itself isn't experiencing itself while it blows in the sky. It isn't until it comes down and it blows against a leaf. And that's when it feels itself. It has the impact, right? So that's the same. The wind knows itself by the impact it has on other things, as God knows itself by the impact we have, he or
as we're ex
as we're experiencing.
experiencing things,
Yeah.
and when we talk about good or bad,
Mhm.
they're not, nothing is in our perception. Yes, there are things that we are uncomfortable with that
Mhm.
cause us to have experience, to cause us to experience an emotional reaction to the situation, but it isn't inherently either good or bad, because something that's bad for us personally, for somebody else, that could have been like the best thing ever. And if we can learn to shift how we go through these experiences, like, you lost everything. I've gone through periods in my life where I've had nothing and I've had a lot. And I'm at a point in my life where things don't mean that much to me anymore, but experiences in relationships, yeah, those are a big deal. And I collect them like, somebody would hoard gold or silver or something. It's just like it's a process of growth, but it's also a process of experiences. And it's the wind brushing against the leaf. When you reach friction is where the growth happens, where the experience happens, where the change happens. Because when a wind brushes against the leaf, it also shifts its direction a little bit because they're pushing off against each other. So
Yeah,
when two
an
things are
experience with
impacted,
both of them, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Ooh, that's good. I like that. I'm going to add that.
And the perception from the leaf and the experience is going to be different than the perception of the wind in the experience. It's two items that are having the same experience, from
Mm.
different angles.
Which is
And then God gets to experience both at the same time.
because
We
God
only get
is
to
the same
experience.
too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, God, this is deep stuff.
it is deep
I
stuff.
love it. I love it. I agree. And I think we get too closer to this understanding the older we get.
Mhm.
My mother's 91 years old, and she sees the world very differently than even she did when she was in her 20s and 30s, and she was a young mother to me and my sibling.
Mhm.
And I can see that in myself too, that as we mature and we have more experiences and we have more data collected to be able to extrapolate truths that make sense to us. It's going to be different for each person.
Mhm.
I don't believe that there's good and bad. I believe there's degrees and I believe there's preferences. There are things we like and things we
Yeah.
don't like, right? But I actually started really studying an infant. And most people don't know this, but our conscious mind does not develop until about age 7 or 8, right? So up
Mhm.
until that, everything we experience is experienced through our senses, and it's stored in this thing that we call a brain, which is like a computer. And from the time we're born until about 3, we don't even recognize that there is a separation between ourselves and everything else because everything exists from us, for us, to us, right? And so I started looking at life as I was watching this infant through his eyes, and he couldn't crawl yet. He was still like just 3, 4 months old. So
Mhm.
he's on his tummy, and there was something he wanted, and his desire was so strong. He didn't give up until he scooted his little body up to it. And I think, how many times as an adult do we want something and we give up? Because our desire for it isn't just pure curiosity. It's something else. It's kind of convoluted. And when it gets hard, we don't want it anymore. Um, and that's when I started to see the world from this, and I called it lifelong playground. I'm like, we have a choice. We can live as if we are constantly in a classroom being tested, pass or fail, having to learn these lessons, or we can live in a perpetual recess where we're on the playground and everything is there for us to experience. And that's the way I choose to live. So I was in a car accident 2 years ago, and it totaled my brand new little car. But it wasn't like fast chase or anything. I mean, I was going 25 miles an hour, and this kid ran a stop sign and hit me and totaled my car. Unbeknownst to me and the doctor, because I don't remember ever hitting my head, I also got a concussion. And because nobody knew and I didn't treat it, it got worse. It became post-concussion syndrome, which is a mild TBI. I couldn't work for a year. I couldn't put two sentences together. I couldn't read a book. I couldn't do my taxes because none of the numbers made sense. I mean, it was a completely different way of being in my body, right? And I had to seclude myself a lot because too many people talking, too much noise. I couldn't go to a coffee shop without having a severe headache and getting dizzy and stuff. So I was going through all this experience, and people like, "Oh, I feel so bad for you." I'm like, "No, I don't feel bad about it. I'm just trying to understand. There's got to be a reason, right? And I don't know what that reason is, but I know I will know at some point." And in the meantime, I went broke. I had to have a GoFundMe happen. I had people donating money that I didn't even know just so that I could survive. And and then I was really, really dizzy for a week. And the doctor said, okay, you need to go to the hospital. And I went to the hospital and they did a different kind of scan on my brain to see if there was bleeding, or they found two aneurysms in my brain that were ready to burst, which when they burst, you die instantly, right? And
Yeah.
they were not caused by the accident. They were just a weakness in that vessel that may have been there since the day I was born, that had just been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I had a brain surgery, which I had, and I'm better and they're shrinking. But now I know the reason. Because if I hadn't had that car accident, I'd be dead. I mean, 100%. That's what the doctor said. You would be dead right now if you hadn't had that surgery. So it's always
There's always a journey, and you
yeah,
just never know what's going to
right,
pop up
right,
and say, "Hey,
right. Yeah, I know.
here you go."
I love life because of that, because it's funny because some people create their own chaos and
Mhm.
they don't even realize that, well, you're choosing that. You're choosing to create that. And, somebody will say, well, so are you saying that someone murders someone, that it's an experience? And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's an experience.
And what's even more profound, I think people make these contracts before they come here. And so it's nothing is a surprise
Right.
to
To the
God.
and God, yeah.
To so when things happen that we perceive as, oh, that's terrible, horrible, you know, that's the agreement that was made. I have a more personal experience that and things are changing, but it's my my oldest, I have 5 children. So my oldest daughter was going through a period where she wasn't speaking to me or her father. Um, she decided that we were terrible people, or for whatever reason, she just cut off communication with us. And in all fairness, I think she's got some issues that she's working on, but she needs help. Um, but she's a perfectly functional human being. I mean, she's got a great heart. She's an amazing mom, and she's funny as the day is long. She just like she's just made these decisions about her relationship with me that are kind of hurtful on my from
Right.
my perspective.
Right.
So I think that we had made this agreement before she came here that this was going to happen. It's just the trajectory of the experiences that we both agreed that we were going to have in this life. But instead of just being like, oh, she's a terrible person and I'll never speak to her again, I'm just like, I'm just going to wait.
Right.
Yes, I acknowledge to myself this hurts at some points, but it doesn't make her any less of an amazing human being
Right.
because this is the place she's going through.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that I have to be like mad at her or whatever, because I'm just not. I just realized that this is, and I didn't get here like the day after it happened.
Right.
Trust me on this. It was a process.
Yeah.
But if we can look at things like that instead of saying, oh my God, I'm the victim and my life sucks and nothing's ever going to be better. Well, that's just simply not true because nothing is always
Right.
or never.
Right.
They're just the experience we're having now. In the
Yeah.
next 10 minutes, it could be something different.
Yeah. I love the story that Neale Donald Walsch tells of the little
Mhm.
soul. Have you ever heard it?
Tell us that one.
So there's a little soul up in heaven, and he's looking down at earth at all these beings, these humans having all these experiences, and he says, God, I want to go down there. I want to do that. I want to see what that feels like. And God says, well, okay, you can do that, but you have to understand that in order for you to have those experiences, you have to find somebody here who will agree to be your enemy, who will agree to be your adversary, who will agree to be a put problems in front of you, because that's the experiences to have that, right? Because you already know what love is. And the little soul goes, but everybody here loves me. And he says, yeah, they do. And then another soul who overheard this said, I'll do this for you. I'll go down there and be your adversary. And the little soul was all happy. And he says, but only on one condition. If you promise that at some point you will remember that I really do love you. And I
Oh,
love that story, right? So now I have to,
it's made me cry.
I know, it's such a beautiful story. So now I'm going to tell you a story from my life and how this showed up.
Okay.
So when I was 34 years old,
Hmm.
I moved from one state to another state, came to this little town, and met this young mother, and our kids were in the same classes, and we got to know each other and found out that both our fathers were named Peter.
Mhm.
Both of them had passed. Both had abused and molested us, right? So we had
Mhm.
this bond of understanding what it was like to have that kind of childhood. And we went and heard Neale Donald Walsch's Little Soul story.
Uh-huh.
And we looked at each other and we both said, oh my God, our fathers were the contract. That was the contract to have that experience so that we
Mhm.
could see what it was like to have it did things to us as a human, right? That gave us
Uh-huh.
opportunities to grow in ways that we wouldn't have been able to grow. And not everybody does choose those ways either.
Mhm.
And so we became friends. Fast forward, we raised our kids together. I got divorced. I got remarried. She was in my wedding. I mean, we were like sisters. We were there together every day. The kids were like cousins.
Mhm.
25 years later, I find out that she and my husband had been having an affair right under my nose for a year. And they were literally texting each other while I was standing right there, and they were with me. So they were getting texts from each other. And I find out about this, of course, and it devastates me and it puts me through the dark night of the soul. And that's from there I wrote the book, Born of Betrayal. And it was all about this betrayal and on both levels. And, my best friend and my husband, the two people I trusted the most in my world, the two people I would have gone to when something bad happened to me, bad, right? I could, they were it. And I tried to talk with her several times and she wouldn't talk to me. She never left her husband. I divorced mine, I moved away. And a year later, and during that time, I knew that not having seen her was stopping me from actually forgiving her because I had to be with her. I knew the minute I saw her, I would
Mhm.
love her all over again, right? And but she wasn't ready for that because she didn't love herself for what she had done and had to go through a year's worth of counseling herself to live with what
Mhm.
she'd done and figure out why. And it's in the book. I can't remember which chapter, but it's a whole chapter about forgiveness and how this showed up by these little synchronistic events that were not supposed to happen but did, and there we were in front of each other. And I just looked at her and I just said, I just want to know why. And she said, I can't tell you why. It was wrong. And he's not a good man. And I'm like, I know. And and she said, I can't talk to you now. I'll call you later because there were people waiting. And I said, okay. And then I just opened up my arms for an embrace. And she fell into my arms. And immediately we're both crying and we're holding each other. And she is apologizing. And I am like, it's okay. It's okay.
Mhm.
I love you. I never stopped loving you because you and I spent 25 years of our life together. I couldn't, if I couldn't love you anymore, I would have had to negate all of those years of my
Mhm.
life. And I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to be able to remember the stories and not be in pain. And so, I'm holding her, I forgive her, we're like forehead to forehead. And then she pulls away and she looks up and then sideways gives me a glance like, like that. And in that very moment, we both knew she was the little soul that had to do this, had to be my adversary so that I went through this experience, which ultimately seriously changed my life. It got me out of a very unhappy marriage. It helped me to understand betrayal on such a different level that is not about infidelity. It's about disloyalty. It's about putting yourself last, which women do all the time.
All the time.
Right. And I was able to see how betrayal was happening throughout my life. And this was the epitome, right? And I remember one particular day when he came to see me before we actually got divorced. And
Mhm.
I looked at him and I said, oh my God, you didn't have a choice. And he goes, he's a narcissist. So, but and he goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, you had to do what you did. You had to betray me because I spent the last 10 years betraying myself in our relationship. So, and that wasn't enough. I had to have you do this in order for me to leave." And he goes, "See, I knew it wasn't that bad." And I'm like, "Yeah." So, okay,
But he's also a little soul.
he is a
I
little
know.
soul. And and I said, "You're my other little soul." This was my experience because I have a very special mission. And this will
Mhm.
take us now to where I'm going in this new reinvention of my life between that devastation and the previous financial devastation, and then rebuilding myself and writing this book, and what it does. And it was like my own kind of version of therapy, because I would
Mhm.
write a chapter and then I'd put it away, and then I'd open it again, I'd read that chapter, and I'd write another chapter. So it was several years in the making, because I wanted to document my patterns and my growth and my insights.
Mhm.
And then I came to the understanding that my job was not to help people to understand betrayal, but to understand loyalty and how to be loyal to themselves, because men are loyal to themselves. I have yet, and I know a lot of men, and good men. I'm not talking about just, you know, selfish, narcissistic, self-centered men. I'm talking about good men who know how to be loyal. They don't even think about it. They are loyal to themselves. It's part of their very nature. Unlike women who have been epigenetically conditioned and patterned to not be loyal to themselves, to literally put everybody else's needs before their own. And when they can't stand it anymore, when they get so full of resentment because they don't have anybody who sees, but that to help her, a good man will help a woman recognize, oh, you need to be loyal to yourself right now, right? Uh, she will explode, and then she becomes the bitch. She becomes an angry, bitchy, woman. And that's what my mission is to help women to step into their true loyal selves, to know themselves, love themselves, honor themselves, because from there, our relationship with men is going to change. Men's relationship with themselves will change, because we have been under the system, I call it, of the patriarchy
Mhm.
since religion, organized religion, came in and decided that, Eve caused all the problems, instead of recognizing that at one time Adam and Eve were one being that split into
And she's the
male and
warrior.
female, and she is the warrior. Yes,
It's her
he is the
job to circle the
protector.
man.
Exactly, he is the protector, but she is the warrior, right? And she will die defending her children. She will die defending her man.
Mhm.
He will also do that for her and for himself. But no matter how much he loves his kids, that
Will never be the same as a mom.
no. And I remember the Dalai Lama saying, "The women of the West will save the world." And I've been thinking about that recently, because you think of the West, right, as us, the United States. And right now, I don't think we're doing a very good job.
Mhm.
Uh, and then when I was thinking about this morning, I realized, what if that's not what he meant? I wish I could talk to him. What if what he meant was the West side, the female side, right, of the divine coming forward, not just inside of us, but that's where it has to start. But it has to come into men too.
Yeah.
And in union, this sacred union, which is what Mary Magdalene and Jesus were about, this sacred union of their fully divine person and fully human persons coming together and teaching that unity, that love and unity consciousness, that can change the world. And we don't have to do it with wars. We don't have to do it through anything but love. And we can start with just our little communities. And the more love and more unity, the more we see other people on their journey, not as good or bad, making judgments about them or about ourselves, it'll just all fall into place because that's the reality. We make it, we create it. We know this, right? It's very exciting.
Oh, Allie, that's like on the edge of my seat. It, I feel it coming. And it's not just, we talk about the divine feminine, and I think sometimes guys hear that and they're like, what about us? Well, men and women have both. We
Right.
are not like, we're not two halves that come together. I'm sorry, you're a whole human being. You have everything you need to be enough. And as soon as we talk about women primarily because women for centuries have just felt like they weren't enough. They were chattel for the longest time. I mean,
Right.
really up until the 80s, women in the United States couldn't practically own property or
No, you could.
have
It wasn't until the 70s that women were allowed to have credit cards, but just in their name, not in their husband's names.
they couldn't have any debt in their
Couldn't.
own name
Yeah,
because they couldn't support themselves.
right,
Women used to go to college in order to find a husband that was of a certain caliber that could
right,
support them.
right.
And fathers would pay, the dowry that fathers paid was a college tuition
Mhm.
for their daughters. And so they could find a decent man who was going to be trained to provide for them. And now, universities are mostly female. I
Yeah,
don't know if you're aware of this.
I really
And
am. Yeah,
and women aren't looking to get married because they're just expected to do it all. So if you're expected to do everything, what the hell do you need a guy for?
but you see, that's the key here. Because I thought about this too, and I used to teach this. Up until the Industrial Revolution,
Mhm.
families lived within communities.
Yep.
And so there was an extended family. So
Yep.
a woman and a man in a marriage were never expected to meet every single need. If you go back through history, right? The villages, the women would gather and the men would gather because there are certain things that only men can have with men and only women can have with women. But when the Industrial Revolution came specifically in this country and companies where the whole town worked for split up, moved, families were separated. And that is when things really shifted because suddenly that woman who was home with kids had no break. There was nobody else to help her. That man who needed assistance to build his barn or to do, didn't have the other men around. So the dependence on the nuclear family became so strong that it created a huge amount of stress, which is when we started to see things break down in marriages, right?
Mhm.
Now, you add to that that we also had two world wars in which many, many men went and died. And in order for this country to continue, women had to come out of the kitchen and into the factories to work to support the war. And that's when schools went from a one school house, with everybody the same age, to elementary school and junior high and high
It
school.
was babysitting. You,
Yes,
you
they were
needed someplace to send your
babysitting,
kids.
someplace to send your kids, right? And that's how it all developed, all through that period, right?
Mhm.
And then when the men came back, the women were expected to just go back into that role of house mother. And she had experienced something in herself, some autonomy that up to that point she never had. And so we've come a long way, baby, right?
Yeah.
And then it was sold to us. That was sold to us that you can do anything. You could actually go to
You can have
school.
it
You
all.
can have it all. You can be that sexy woman dressed perfect for your man when he comes home and be that businesswoman and take care of the kids and do it all. And we bought into it, especially our
Gosh.
generation, right? We were really the first ones who bought in 100%.
Yeah. And
Trouble was, it contributed it contributed to the biggest malaise that I think hit adults in our generation was the guilt that we had for not being with our children enough, from leaving
Yeah.
all these kids,
That's,
latch kids, right?
yep. I got two just like that.
Right? And so, what did we do to assuage our guilt? We took them on fancy vacations. We made sure that we got them involved in a lot of fun stuff. We gave them all kinds of toys. We lessened our rules and our expectations, and we created another generation of problems, right? And at the same time, we're still having divorces. So now it's also families are being torn apart. So they don't even have that stability anymore. And that's a whole nother generation of kids who are like, what's it all for? That's my kids' generation,
Yeah, I have two in that
right?
same boat. And they're like so many of their friends' parents would get divorced. Unfortunately, my ex-husband and I had a fairly amicable divorce. We never went to court. I just like I left the kids with him. I gave him the house. I took all the bills and I left. I had to leave. He was an alcoholic at the time. We're still friends. When
Right.
I go to San Diego, Curtis is there. We do stuff together. My current husband, they get along great. We have fun with the grandkids, but so many people pitted the kids against the other parent, and those kids were just like,
Yeah. Victims of
we're part of both of you.
right.
Where do we go with this information?
And a lot of men, unfortunately, were not equipped because, again, one of the things that we as women did when we stepped out into the business world, into working, is that we took our feminine side and put her on a shelf while we went to work. And we stepped into our masculine energy, right? That's the active, directive, goal-oriented,
It
little
done.
bit less relational, so that we could do this job, which actually changed our physiology and put us in the high risk of heart disease that we never had before this time period.
Mhm.
And we started forgetting when we went home that in order to be in a relationship with our husbands, we had to let that masculine side go down and bring that feminine back up. But we were exhausted because we didn't just work outside the home. We also came home and yeah, like my first husband, my husbands helped cook the meals, they helped give babies baths. But that's not where the energy is. The energy is in organizing the lunches and figuring out what to make for dinner and making the shopping list and making sure they get their homework done and making sure that they go to the doctor. It's all of that. You still are the manager of the home. So we ended up buying into a big bag of lies and took everything on and took so much in the process that we pushed our men into their feminine, which made them uncomfortable. They didn't feel strong anymore. They didn't feel like they had direction, that they could be a man, they could protect. And so all of this is part of that patriarchy, right?
Mhm.
Women come back to center and really live within their bodies from this balanced masculine and feminine. What it will do is heal men's ability to do the same. And that's why I think it's what he was saying, what the Dalai Lama was saying. That's why women have to take the mantle and heal themselves. We're raising the next generation of men. If we don't take this responsibility on and we continue to play out these internal misogynistic, I mean, we are worse to other women than men are to women. We are,
By far, by
right?
far.
That we will continue to raise young men who are lost and who, because of that system that isn't there to support them and they're lost, they get angry. And we've seen what happens when that happens. Angry young men make angry decisions and they self-destruct ultimately. So it is really, really, really important. And that's why I feel like this is my mission, is to help women to understand we can save the world. We can change it by starting with us, by becoming loyal to us. And when we do, and that's why you're seeing so many single women, because the women who are allowing for that
Mhm.
They still don't really quite understand that they're doing it, but they are allowing for it. They're afraid to be in relationship because they don't know how to be loyal to themselves and be in a relationship. They've never been taught how to do that. And so the minute they get into a relationship, they lose themselves. And then that's why they leave. It's happened to me many, many times. And so I know a lot of women my age who are divorced who are choosing not to be in relationship.
I will never get in another relationship.
Right?
My husband's my last
Yeah.
relationship. I love him to death, and we've been able to cultivate a life that works for both of us because we give each other space, and we've come to terms on people's responsibilities, and we don't try to play the victim.
Right.
I could tell you a funny story. Just this morning, we were both in the kitchen because we like to cook food at the same time, but we don't necessarily eat the same things. So when he first came home, because he was a truck driver for 28 years, so he was only home for 3 days at a time, and I would wait on him hand and foot. But now that he's been retired, it's like, we make our own ice cubes. We don't have an automatic ice maker. And he uses all the ice cubes. So I taught him how to make ice. And he was and to grate cheese, because I don't like to buy grated cheese because I think that they put chemicals on it, and I don't think that's good for you. So he was grating cheese, and I taught him how to grate cheese into the bag so that it doesn't get all over the place. And he's like, I'm the only one that ever grates cheese.
Oh,
I said, yes, and you're the only one who ever makes ice cubes these days too. I was trying to be the victim. I'm
oh,
like, I'm empowering you, honey,
right,
because
right.
own it. You are the victim.
Oh my God, I love that. That's
And so
funny.
he laughed.
And then humor is a very important piece of relationship too, you know. Yeah. Yeah. But
But
that's
sometimes you just gotta validate people's points. It was
exactly. And difference, so interesting to me because I understand the psychology and how and the neurology of the brain, like our neurology is wired for difference, not sameness, difference, right? So what I mean by that, you understand, but for those who may not, is that when we go out into the world, our brain automatically is scanning and gathering information, looking for what is different than me. So if I see someone who is dressed different or has different color skin, they're going to pop out to me because they're different than me. That difference doesn't make them wrong or bad. It's just different. But because we want to belong, that's another very strong internal yearning. It's something wired into us to belong. We then look for sameness, right? So if you look at your group of friends, you could say they're all the same. They have the same beliefs, the kind of same work and all. Mine have never been like that. Never. Because from the time I was little, I always saw difference as good and sameness as boring, you know? So I have friends from every walk of life, every different, it's different. And I'm the hub. So when I would have a party and I would bring all these people together, this is what's inclusive, right? It's not about making everybody the same. It's about honoring everybody's differences. And and that starts internally with honoring our own
yes.
differences.
And not having to be the best at everything,
Oh,
just loving yourself for who you are and appreciating what your gifts are and being the best you can at that. And if you aren't the best at something else, find somebody who is and praise them up and down,
yeah,
and let them be the best at it. This whole everybody needs to make A's thing is bullshit.
it is bullshit.
You
Yeah,
only need to make A's in one thing, that thing you're gifted at, and it should be easy for you.
right,
And if it's easy for you, you're on the right track. If you're
right.
struggling, it's not it. Do something, find out what it is that's easy for you, do that.
Do that. Right, because that's where your talent is. That's where your passion is. That's where you become
What you're here to
alive.
do.
It's what you're here to do. Right. And we hold ourselves back a lot from that. And why? Because we don't want to stand out too much. We want to belong. And if I stand out too much, people aren't going to trust me. People aren't going to believe that I am who I say I am. But the truth of it is I'm a million me's. There's not there's not just one me, you know? I'm every part of every experience I have ever had. I am every part of everything and every person I have ever been engaged with. I can't not be, right? And so that's where forgiveness is such a cool thing because, and where again, that's in my book, how I came to understand forgiveness and loving yourself
Mhm.
in very different ways than most people teach it. And I did an article or a talk, I can't remember which, where I said, you don't need to forgive them in order for you to forgive yourself. In order for you to be okay, you never have to forgive them. If you forgive yourself, when you come to a place where you truly forgive yourself for the choices you made, conscious or otherwise, you look across and there they are, and you're like, I don't have anything to forgive you for. You really didn't do anything. You participated in the drama that I needed to experience. Thank you for that. You know, I wish you well. Goodbye. I'm done with that.
Often people confuse forgiveness with,
Condoning.
yes, condoning,
Right,
or excusing is the word I
right,
was looking for. But uh, like we aren't taught to excuse people when they hurt you. We're taught to forgive them. And that's this is a big distinction. Words have meanings,
right.
and the meaning to excuse means that you are allowing them grace for what they did to you.
Mhm.
And you don't, it doesn't come with the implied im implication that you're going to allow that to continue.
Right,
It's a one-time thing, and I'm giving you grace, please don't do it again.
right,
When a child hits another child, you should tell them to say, excuse me,
right,
rather than I forgive you,
right,
because you don't want to forgive that.
right.
That's not forgivable. It's excusable, but not forgivable. Forgiveness is coming to terms with something for yourself.
It's forgiving yourself love.
Yes,
Forgiving yourself
giving
love. And
yourself
when
love. I
you
love that.
forgive before, when you give before
Mhm.
love to
Mhm.
yourself,
Mhm.
it's naturally extended to everybody else. It
Yeah.
doesn't make what he did any different. That was true. He did those things. I'm sorry he did those things because
Mhm.
he's the one who has to live with the fact that he did them. And I live with the fact that I allowed it, but I know
Mhm.
now that I did as a result for a purpose within me, and
Mhm.
I forgive that. I give love for my process.
Mhm.
It's twisted, right? And it's the same with loving yourself. Like everybody, all the counselors, I used to say it like that too. You got to love yourself. And I'm like, "Ah, man, nobody knows what that means. What does it mean?" And what I realized through my experience was there is a way that I love people that I I experience love for somebody and I show it through my words and my actions and my thoughts about that person. So loving yourself is going to be different for every single person
Mhm.
because we do not feel loved when we do not receive from somebody else the love we understand, which is the love we give, right?
Mhm.
So loving myself, I got to go back to my values and say, well, I value honesty. I value relationship. I value truth. I value God and spirit. And so to love me means I got to give myself the time to commune. Means I have to I have to be honest with myself and forgive love to myself when I let myself down. that's loving me. It's not a massage,
Mhm.
or a day spa. That is not loving you. That's just another agenda on your list of
You can
to-dos.
you can put meditation in there with that too, because
Absolutely.
oftentimes people are made to feel guilty because they won't sit for 20 minutes and meditate. It's a gift you can give yourself or not give yourself, and it doesn't make you a good person or a bad person.
No,
It
and you know
just
what I realized too, though? Uh, and this is what my guides have finally said, everybody meditates differently.
Mhm,
I love to write. I journal every day of my life.
mhm,
It is a ritual now where there's certain things I do within this writing process. And there are moments, like literally 5 minutes could go by where I don't have a single thought, that I am living between the thoughts, which is
mhm.
what meditation is, right? And
Yep.
just experiencing what I'm seeing. So it doesn't have to be 20 minutes sitting in one place. It could be walking in nature. It could be laying in your bed and praying. It could be like me, journaling. It could be when you dance, you feel it. You're between the thoughts. That's all meditation is, between
Mhm.
thoughts. And so, and that's what information also comes to us, right? And I got information all the time. I'm always getting spirit guides talking to me. Um, but I don't necessarily trust it like most people, most of us don't. And I'd love to go to psychics and they tell me, and I'm like, I really don't need that. I can know my own thing. But what I realized is I didn't trust what I was hearing. I'm like, how do I know it's not just me talking to me? And one day my guide said, well, it is. Because we are you and you are us. It is you talking to you, but it's the wiser, loving, united part of you. And when you get that information, you will know that it's from that part because it always feels good. Doesn't feel
Mhm.
bad, doesn't feel attacking. It's not punishing, it's not demanding. It's very loving, it's very kind. And,
And
and
it just shows up.
it does just show up. I was like, writing yesterday and I'm like, oh my God, my brain can't sit still. All these different thoughts were coming to me. And it happened in slow motion today. And I realized, oh, that's not an ADD brain. It's not even my brain injury. It is spirit saying, don't go do that right now. Go do that right. I know you're busy with this, but something's going to happen if you don't go do that right now. And so I go do it. And I'm like, I feel this relief. Like, yeah, okay, that was good. And then I can go back to, so it is them talking to us all the time. And they're guiding us all the time too. Boy, we have touched a lot of subjects today, girl.
We have really a lot. Let's do one more piece, and then
Okay.
then we'll talk about how people can get in touch with you so they can have their own personal conversation with you,
Okay.
healing and loving themselves. But it doesn't even have to be like outside things. And if you listen to your guides, your inner guidance, the things that you just suddenly know, and or you're asking questions, if you're looking around, if you're paying attention, the universe will answer you, and sometimes they'll just have fun with you. I've had a time when I was talking to God, and it was just like something was going on. I was trying to talk to elementals. It was in my backyard, and I'm like, okay, rain. I want it to rain like right now, and there wasn't like hardly
Wow.
any clouds in the sky, and it rained. I promise you, it
Oh,
rained
I love that.
right over me
Oh,
for like 10 minutes.
oh
And
my
then it went
God.
away. But it was just this little circle over where I was standing. It wasn't even 10 minutes. It was maybe like 30 seconds. But it was definitely rain, and it was definitely right there. It was just the universe being funny with me.
Isn't that amazing? I love that stuff. I play with cards all the time, and I have one particular deck. It's called the Archangel Oracle deck, and
Mhm.
I pull an archangel every day. And I yesterday I was getting ready to pull it, and I was, how you split the cards before you,
Yeah.
and I split it, and I saw this one angel. I'm like, oh, it's going to be you that's going to show up today. I just know it. I mixed thing up, laid out the 44 cards, and then I just close my eyes and I let my finger and the energy from my finger guide me and I pull it out. And sure enough, it's Azrael, who is the death angel, the angel of death.
Uh-huh.
And you get that. You always go, hey, I'm not sure I want to experience this right now. But anyway, he came through it's about transitions and that, you are in a transition. I'm like, okay, that's the message. I get that. And if you know anybody who is suffering from a loss, just tell them I have wrapped my wings around him. And so I put the card down and I'm like, okay, well, I don't really know anybody who's experiencing, right now grief.
Mhm.
And then this friend of mine came into my mind at 1:37 and was such a strong feeling that I just texted her and said, "You're in my thoughts. I just needed to let you know you're in my thoughts and I love you." I didn't hear from her until that night, and she called me and said, "I can't believe that you contacted me." I mean, right at that moment, her ex-husband, the father of her children, had passed at 1:45.
Wow.
Yeah. And I said, "Oh, the Archangel Azrael has you wrapped in his wings of comfort." Right. And I'm like, oh, God, goosebumps, like this is the magic of life. I love that magic.